Okay, great. That was Agua de Bebe. It's the first time I hear it. Oops. Let's see what's working with the audio. Am I audible? Check one, two. Hi, yes, am I audible now? My cousin just decided to run away. But that was Agua de Babe, which I'm just hearing for the first time. It's a recommendation from our speaker today. And I'm very excited on this note to welcome you all to what welcome. Looking at the chat, we have quite a number of you joining us from different parts of the world. Henry from Henry. I guess that's a mistake. But yes, I see folks joining us from Manchester, from Sweden, from India, from different parts of the world. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome. Uh, really exciting, really exciting. Aha, Henry from Nigeria. Thanks for fixing that. But really exciting to have you all joining. We're past the halfway mark and I'm super, super excited for this. Before we go any further, as you see on the screen, please feel free to rename yourselves. You can also choose which language you want to listen to. If you use the find the interpretation or the globe icon on the Zoom menu, and there you can choose which of the language you want to listen to this session in. We have Spanish, we have Arabic, and we also have the English interpretation room if someone is speaking in Arabic or Spanish. You can go in there. Also rename yourselves. We encourage you to rename yourselves. You can use the prefix ENG for English, ES for Spanish, AR for Arabic, just so we know who is in the room, and you could also connect with other people from the same region. Thank you so much. Before we get on, for those of you that have been a part before now, you play rules. But for those joining for the first time, and I see many of you joining for the first time today, we've crossed 123. Incredible show up today, I will say. But you know the drill. You're muted when you come in. Please stay muted. And we love to see your faces, so why not turn on your cameras if you can? We would love to see your faces. And this session is being recorded. Just while you turn on your camera, it's good to know that this session is being recorded, except for the breakout rooms when we will have that. And we're going to have quite an interesting breakout session today. But the session is recorded. If you've missed any of the 4 sessions, please check them out on YouTube. You could just search for 2026 Water in Communications, and there's a playlist there where you can find all the sessions from June the 2nd when we started all the way till the last session that we had. And today's session is also going to be uploaded there. So if you've missed something, if you want to catch up on something that you found really interesting, you can find it there. We've also shared an email with many of you that contains the link to the Google Drive, and there you can find the session slides. You could also find the summary from the charts. I've sort of worked around all that comes through the charts, and I've been able to pick relevant links, contacts, thoughts, key takeaways, and I've put them in those folders. So you can sort of reflect or refresh your memory about each of the sessions we've had in the past. The full program is also on that Google Drive link. If you do not have it, feel free to let us know, and we'll make sure you get it in the next mail out. Water in Communications 2026, the theme, communicating water for collective action. I'm super excited about this year's participants, how engaged you've been, joining us every Tuesdays, every Thursdays. Really, really do appreciate that. Indeed. And continue to join us. We really look forward to seeing you for the workshop session, and I'm so excited about it. But before we get into the session, I want to say a very big thank you to Grundfos Foundation for possible for us to bring to you the Water in Communication series for the 6th edition. Water in Communication is organized by Stockholm International Water Institute, SIWI, with support from the Grundfos Foundation. And we really do appreciate their support for making this possible at no cost. Are we ready for today's session? If you haven't checked out the World Water Week program, I'll give you a second or two to scan the QR code on your screen, or you could just simply Google World Water Week, and I'm sure it's going to pop up. It's going to be taking place in Stockholm, 23rd to 27th of August 2026, and you can register to be a part on site in Stockholm, or you could just join us online if you cannot make it to Stockholm for whatever reasons. And with that said, just want to introduce again the team. My name is Sheifumi Adebote. I'm the program lead for the Water in Communications webinar series, and together with Guy Dos Santos, digital assistant for World Water Week, we'll be guiding you through to the session. And I'm super excited for today's session. Thank you so much for joining us from different parts of the world. And one thing that I can tell you, first workshop, as you see on your screen, we laid the foundation in week 1. Week 2, we delved into policy and influence, looking at strategic water communications for policy influence, but also the roles of miscommunication. And I think that was a very interesting session. And today we go into what I hope will be a more interesting session as we look into beyond the claims, how to investigate water claims. There are claims every now and then. Everyone is pretty much making claims. How do we investigate that? That's going to be the focus for today. Thursday's session will be a panel as we sort of move from policy to people. How can we simplify some of these global policies? And I think today's session helps us get into that mood or that frame of mind very easily. And next week will be the last week. So do not miss any of them. Remember, there will be certificates for those that are able to attend. 75%. That's 6 out of 8 sessions. Of that said, I am ready. Let me see in the chat how excited you are for today's session. Thank you, many of you joining from different parts of the world. Really appreciate that. I see someone also helping out with the Google link and helping each other, and that's really, really great. Just before we get into today's session, I want to very quickly mention you will receive an email with the details for an additional session in August. What are we going to be doing in August? We want to see that you do not just have this knowledge and keep it to yourself. We want you to put it to test. So in August, there's going to be one. You remember the litmus test. You remember the Ultra acronym. You remember how to spot misinformation. In August will be time for you to show us how well you can use this. So fingers crossed for that. And yes, I think we can just get into today's session. Colin Herron is the facilitator of the workshop today. And Colin and I have been speaking quite a lot over the last few weeks, just to see that we put everything in context, to see that there is no hanging subject here, or to see that we make the best of today's session, the first workshop in the Water in Communication series. So I'm very, very excited to welcome Colin Herron to facilitate today's session as we go beyond the claims and help you understand how to investigate water claims. I'll introduce Colin simply as a freelance water and sustainable development expert, but he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself as he takes the mic from here. Colin, welcome.
Thank you, Shehi, and thank you to, 150 participants today. That is quite impressive. And I guess this topic is of interest to many people. So I'm hoping that we will have a really hands-on workshop as...
I don't hear you, Colin. I wonder if it's just me.
Oh, I don't know.
Good.
Okay. Can everyone else hear me? Could I see some thumbs up? Okay,
yes,
we can hear. Yes,
you.
Thank you. Excellent. When the technology's on our side, it's always a good start. So, beyond the claims is the topic for today. And what I wanted to do, if I have control, let's see if the technology continues to be on our side of the slides. is walk you through a little bit of theory, and then we have an exercise that all of you will do, hopefully. And we will do that in breakout groups before reporting back to the plenary. So that's a little bit what we'll do. But on the topic, and before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. And let's see if perhaps Guy, if you could go to next, because it seems like the control isn't working very well. Apologies for the technology issue at this stage. If okay, it seems there we are. Okay, now a good base to start. Okay, so I've been working in water for 26 years. I have a degree in French and Spanish language and literature, and a master's in integrated water resources management. And the reason I say that is because I'm very deliberate about the use of language in water. And I think that's a common thread that I've seen cutting through this series. I've worked with public sector, private sector, NGOs, international and intergovernmental bodies. In fact, I still work with several, although today I'm not representing any organization, I'm just representing myself. And I've written reports, I've reviewed claims, I've worked on tens of millions of dollars of corporate water projects. So I have a good basis to talk to you today. And the trademark I bring is that I am respectfully disruptive. So feel free to challenge me on this if you feel that I'm not being respectful enough or disruptive enough. Getting the balance right is for me very important. So I'm going to try to move to the next and see if yes, I wanted to say that today I'm actually completing my World Water Week bingo card, and I've counted 9 different roles. So if I don't think the remote is working, but if Guy, you can do one more. With this conversation I'm giving today, facilitating this session, I'm actually completing the World Water Week, I would say. And I wanted to invite all of you to think about the different roles you've had in the World Water Week and put in the chat how many different roles that you see on the screen have you had in the past, just to get you warmed up and to see if the technology is working, which is always a good start. If
Can
we
I
can,
ask, do you mean at World Water Week or at conferences in general?
at the World Water Week specifically. Thank you for clarifying that. So, what we want to do for today in this workshop, um, okay, I can see some of the chat coming in very good. That proves that you can actually hear me, which is always a good start. So today, what I want to do is to help all of us to understand how to support more responsible, accurate, and ethical communication on water claims, promoting collective action. And for me, this is what it's all about. We need to make sure that when claims are made, that they are backed by science, that they are accurate, but also that they are framed in the right way. So by doing this, we hope that participants will be able to understand and apply different investigative techniques to critically examine these water claims. Especially, I'm going to focus on corporate water claims. As Shehi mentioned, any actor can make water claims, but we're going to focus specifically on the corporate side. That should allow us all to contextualize these water claims as part of a bigger water system, and then to turn that into credible, evidence-based stories, which is what we all want to get to. So I'm not going to say too much about the agenda for today. But I did just want to say that anyone can make water claims. Farmers make claims about the water they use, how much, quality, and so on. Utilities, industry, hydropower operators, indigenous communities, the public at large, civil society. The list could go on and on. So I'm going to focus today on industry, and some of the questions that we examine could also be used to question the claims of any stakeholder group for water. Um, industry in particular makes claims around the water intakes and how much water it takes from a water body, the water efficiency, so how much water per unit of product does it require, the discharge water, so the volume that it discharges, and the water quality at the point of discharge. And these are relevant both in time and space, because a unit of water is not the same all year round and all in all sites. But we've taken the river basin as the typical unit to analyze water claims, which, I mean, there are many ways it could be at the aquifer level. I mean, it could be sort of at the level of a city as well, an administrative unit. But the river basin is the typical and most appropriate unit most often. I wanted to say a word or two about water replenishment, which is the mechanism that companies are using to essentially put back more water into the watershed than, or at least the same volume than they use in the productive process. So returning water to compensate or to offset their water consumption. Industry is using this increasingly. In fact, there are a number of methodologies that have been developed to frame this. Typically, the offsets are done through projects implemented by external parties, and these are typically verified by credible third parties, companies who are hired specifically to check these claims. However, one important aspect is that the volume that is the target is the volume defined by the company itself. Typically, that is the volume that the company cannot reduce further. It's the volume that is part of the final product, typically, or the volume that is lost in the productive process. This volumetric water benefit accounting 2.0 is one methodology that is typically used to align this process for companies. I wanted to share some insights from my side. So, three big things I've learned from working with corporates on water claims. I think most corporates genuinely do want to do the right thing. They are trying to do something that is defendable, and they're acting in good faith. And I say this because with Shehi before the session, we had a big conversation around the fact that in this workshop, it's not about catching anyone out. It's not about proving who is hiding or who is acting in bad faith. Obviously, asking these questions can lead to that. But from my experience, especially the big companies, the ones that are making substantial claims, they know that there's a lot at risk and they are therefore trying to do the right thing. I think what's key is the second point here is that these water claims need to be understood in the context of the basin in which they are taking place. And this is where the communicators and journalists here can hopefully help. The other point is that projects which are well-intentioned and are trying to do the right thing aren't always doing it. And I say that because the companies that are sponsoring these water claims are, I mean, they're companies that are very good at selling a product, developing a product. They're not always experts in designing water-related projects. So they work with external parties. Some of these external parties are hugely reputable and so on. But of course, all project design has an element of risk. And sometimes the project design can lead to undesirable outcomes, or that the desired impact is not achieved over time. I'll say a bit more about that later. But if you receive a corporate water claim, where can you check some of the information that the company is presenting? CDP, what used to be called the Climate Disclosure Project, has a water-related disclosure mechanism, which a lot of companies, especially the bigger companies, use to report their own information. Often companies also report in their own sustainability reports, annual reports, sometimes regulatory filings as well. So all of these can be a very valuable source of information on the company's claims. Then there are external certification mechanisms. The Alliance for Water Stewardship is one that is very well known, which is a certification mechanism for companies that want to not just do the right thing, but be certified as doing the right thing within the context of their water stewardship activities. And thirdly, government and regulatory sources are often a very valuable source of information. Here I have the example from one of my two countries, Mexico, where there's a database of public water rights, which is openly available. Anyone can consult it. In each country, the information is different, but on the whole, in most countries, there's some sort of information source of the public sector. Some key questions to ask. So I mentioned these offset activities that companies sponsor. Often they are around reforestation or around agricultural water use efficiency or around water sanitation hygiene activities. Some key questions you could ask on reforestation, for example, is what's the sustainability plan? And how will the trees that are planted be maintained over time? I've unfortunately been to sites that have been reforested in year one. And when you go back in year two, there's not a lot left of the reforestation. And what we want, of course, when doing a reforestation is to ensure that the trees will survive and generate the benefits for nature and for water, of course, in this case. So there needs to be a plan to maintain the reforestation. Agricultural water use efficiency sounds like a very logical approach in that you have a volume of water that's being used to grow crops. If you use less of it, there's a saving in theory. But often, if you save a unit of water in site A or in plot A, it just gets used in plot B. Or the farmer will diversify the crops to be more efficient, but with more water intensive crops. So there needs to be a plan, not at the level of a plot, but at the level of a landscape on the water use. And the public policy has to be supporting the water saving, or there will be no water saving. And on WASH, any activity that really aims to ensure a water saving in households, for example, or in marketplaces or schools or healthcare facilities, needs to have a sustainability plan, and it needs to be financially viable for the users. If that's not there, then it's unlikely that the benefits will be maintained over time. And in those cases, the claim will likely not be sustainable. So a few common challenges, the unit of water, this audience is of communication experts. So you know that the importance of how information is presented. 10,000 cubic meters would be how a water expert would present this. That is 2.6 million gallons or 10 million liters. The way this is presented makes a huge difference to how it's perceived. And the public at large doesn't necessarily understand the difference between cubic meters, gallons, and liters. So this framing can make a significant impact on the perception of the information. The spatial unit is important. So replenishment or water claims need to be in the same unit in which the water was extracted. You cannot say, I'm compensating for my water use in watershed A with actions in watershed B. That's just not defendable. And time is important. So if I take the example of reforestation, a reforestation project will not reach the maximum water benefit in the first year or two. You need to allow time for the trees to grow and be maintained over time. I wanted to share some final reflections, and I'm actually realizing that there's a little bit of missing information, so that's good to keep me on my toes. But finally, I mean, most companies are genuinely trying to be good water stewards, at least the big companies. And what I think is important is that we can encourage companies, recognizing that this is a difficult task, but to do the best job about it and to be as transparent as possible about what they are doing and what they do know, but also about what they don't know and what they're not doing. And that is difficult if they're in a defensive position where everything is questioned. Yes, we should question, but appropriately based on the information that is presented. So water replenishment, which is this means of presenting the claims, is not perfect. Nothing is perfect in this world, but it's a good place to get us started. And as communicators and journalists, you have an important role to play in helping the audience to understand both the opportunities on the positive, but also the limitations of these approaches and the fact that this isn't changing the world necessarily from one day to the next, but it is a step in the right direction. So this is where I stop. My time is up in terms of the presentation. I realized that the slide that was missing had an important soundbite, which was that water is not fungible. Unlike carbon, a unit of carbon is the same anywhere in the world. If you have a ton of CO2 equivalent in Bolivia or in Afghanistan, it's the same unit. A unit of water is so case specific that it's not the same everywhere. Anyway, this is where I stop talking for a moment. We have a few minutes for questions and answers before we then go to the practical exercise. So, Shehi, over to you if you'd like to help facilitate that.
Thank you so very much indeed, Colin. Really do appreciate the insights you've shared. Quite a few things stood with me, but I'm also curious to hear from the audience what stood out for you from the session. I can see from the emojis, from the reactions that we were following, and now it's time for questions. So let's see. If you have questions for Colin, please put them in the chats. I'm having a look at the chats now and seeing if we find some questions for Colin. There is one from Kim. Kim is very new to this topic, and she wants to know, could you please define the term water claims? What does claim means here?
Yeah, and it's a very good question. Essentially, claim is any information that is presented by any user, and it can be industry or it can be a farmer, it can be a utility, but any information that is presented as being true by that user about its water use. So it could be about how much water it's using. It could be about the quality of that water. It could be about the efficiency of that water. So any information that is presented, and it's incumbent on all of us to question a little bit if that information is true and if it is not just accurate, but also appropriately representative of the reality.
Quite a number of questions, but I think I will start with Dokato, who is also asking the same question. Dokato Victoria saying, what are we talking about when you're discussing water claims? I think this basic definition is missing before the materials are presented, so the group can be on the same page. You might find a way to squeeze that in also responding to the question from Nora. Nora is asking, aren't carbon credits based exactly on assumptions? And I think she's also comparing this also, like you said, vis-a-vis water usage. So your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, so on the first question, and I'm looking for it in the chat actually, but yeah, essentially, I mean, a water claim is anything that any information that's presented on water. So hopefully, as we go into the exercise, you will see some examples. The reason I presented water replenishment so much is that it is the means by which companies in particular are translating their claims into a set of actions. And this is hugely relevant because the volume that the company is claiming is also the volume that it tries to offset. So if one can analyze and question the claim, there is a means of dimensioning the action appropriately. In terms of the second question on carbon offsets, yes, there are a series of assumptions. In the carbon world, in fact, there have been recent controversies about how carbon offsets have been framed, because if any of the assumptions are inaccurate or questionable, then the whole basis for the carbon claim is questionable as well. It's the same basic logic with water replenishment. The difference being that carbon offsets are universal, so planetary, whereas water offsets are within the context of the same basin. But essentially, yes, it's about offsetting based on information on what is the water claim, but also what is the benefit of the action that is being undertaken. And this is why this volumetric water benefit accounting, VWBA, is so important, because it standardizes this approach, and it has a third party verification. So that takes away some of the uncertainty about the assumptions.
Thank you. And with this VWBA, I think it brings to fore one of the questions that was being asked in 2 sessions ago, where we were talking about a platform to check claims, to see validate claims where they are. But I will move very quickly to a question by Iman. This is a question that I also had listening to you. I'll read it as she has it. You said a couple of times that companies are doing the right thing and genuinely trying to be good water stewards. In my experience, I have seen this if it is profitable, but if it is not, then they are not typically interested in doing much beyond greenwashing. How are you, Colin, basing your statements that they are genuinely trying?
Yeah, so companies face three main risks regarding water. Um, there's the physical water risk, which they face, which is do they have access to sufficient water in sufficient quantity for their productive processes? There's the regulatory risks of, am I going to get a permit or a license, a discharge permit, or whatever permission from the government? And importantly, there's the reputational risk. So the reputational risk is not, um, it's basically how what I'm doing as a company is perceived by the public at large. These three risks can be very material for companies, and they realize that everything they do will be scrutinized. So it has to be impeccable, because any questioning about why they're doing the action or the scope of the action can lead to a damage to their reputational license to operate. So especially the most visible companies, they are really striving, and I can say this from experience, from having worked with, I'm not going to mention company names, but the big companies, should we say, that they are genuinely trying to do the right thing, but they are not experts in this field of water stewardship. So this is why they have to work with the experts. And I think those experts have to be neutral. They have to really be striving, again, to align the company's interests and investments with the needs of the watersheds. And this is, for me, the best guarantee in some ways. When you see a TNC or a WWF or other bodies that work with these corporates, you know that there is a mark of quality associated with them as well. Sorry, I just want to add on the greenwashing point. At the end of the day, if a company is investing,
I was going to ask you that. Have you seen greenwashing? Just sorry, go on, please.
yeah, no, I mean, greenwashing is a difficult term to sort of categorize sometimes. But what I would say is, if a company is investing $5 million in offsetting actions that improve water security in a basin X, Y, or Z, um, one might ask, is it greenwashing? Is it doing the right thing? it's nuanced. In any case, I would say if it's investing a large amount of money in actions that are needed, I'll take that, and then we can discuss whether it's greenwashing or not. But typically, companies, they again, if they are perceived as greenwashing, then that would be a negative on their reputation. So they certainly are trying again to do the right thing. I don't say that every company achieves it, but certainly every company that I've worked with is trying not to be doing greenwashing.
I'll jump in here. I know we have to go to the breakout rooms. I'm very much curious to see how people engage with this fictional case study that you've put up, but there are also quite a number of important questions in the chat. I'll run through three of them and let's see if you can respond to them, sort of collapse your response to them. One is from Connor. Connor is asking, how important is the reputational risk in reality? We talk about the need for a social license, but he wants to know how important is the reputational risk for companies. Then I'll go on to Angela's question. Could you give a highlight of how water utilities, especially the strategic and communications department, can incorporate how we tell water stories? And she says this particularly targeted at external funders and the people that they serve. And then the third question I will take is from Sumbo. When working with water scientists, it can be hard to convince them that raw scientific claims aren't easily digestible. So the question is, how do we make the scientific claims present when we contextualize water data for the general audience? Quite a big one, but yes, let's see.
Yeah, wow, those are really good questions. So in the case of water utilities or water companies in the UK, they have a natural monopoly. So the reputational risk there is somewhat different, in that they have monetary risks, and they have been fined in the UK for past transgressions. But really, in that particular case, I think even in the worst case scenario, there's no punishment that is more than monetary. There's no threat of taking away the license yet. That would require a big change in the legislation in the UK. And even despite the worst transgressions, I haven't seen any talk yet about remunicipalizing the water system, which could be of interest. On the point about water utilities and how to communicate this, I think very briefly, the water utilities, because they are this natural monopoly, a customer can't choose to go with one utility or another. There is I think a lack of interest in general from the public about water claims. They only become interested in water when there's a significant threat, drought or flood or a water quality issue, too much, too little, too dirty. That's the point where people react. I think the big challenge, and there are some good examples of how utilities are mobilizing users proactively, trying to prevent crises before they happen. But typically, they haven't necessarily got the impact that they would look for. The best example is actually in a crisis, and it's Cape Town when they were near day zero. The mobilization that took place was impressive. Even though that was not without crises. Maybe, Shehi, I know we're a little bit over time, and I'm actually looking for the third question.
It was about contextualizing data. Was it
yes.
that?
Yeah, exactly. I think the public at large doesn't understand most of what we're talking about. And I know that when I talk to my wife about this or my kids, they look at me with this blank stare, like, what is this thing you're talking about? As if I were referring to some life form on Mars or something. So I think we do have a challenge translating this into something that can be presentable and understandable by the public at large is the difficult task. But that's why, linked to the breakout groups, we have this wonderful group of 200 individuals here on this call. So I'm not going to do the homework for them, but that's the reason for the breakout group that's coming. So
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Colin. Really do appreciate it. And with no further ado, we put up the screen again and you see the instruction for the breakout groups. I also put in the chat a link that takes you to a document, and on that document you can see the instructions again, but you can also see the questions. Colin, do you want to introduce the instructions?
Yes, thank you. So, what I did for this fictitious case study, I made up based on some sort of real experiences, but this is not a real case. The company Fresh Brew Beverages has made this press release, and your task as a communicator or journalist is to question this, to try to understand the claims and how accurate they may be. So the Fresh Brew Beverages is a global producer of beverages, and it has a water stewardship strategy, and it is issuing this press release, which has four main outcomes it's reporting on. The first is it says that it has reduced its water use across operations by 35% through efficiency improvements mainly and process optimization. Secondly, it claims to have reduced its water consumption in its agricultural value chain by 50%. So what does that mean? Now, and remember those questions that I asked earlier in one of the slides. Thirdly, it mentions that it has improved water security for more than 20,000 local residents. So there's a whole series of questions you could ask about what it means to improve water security and how the 20,000 local residents are counted. And fourthly, it claims to have replenished 10 million liters of water in the local watershed through relevant restoration and community water projects. This is the only information that I will provide on Fresh Brew Beverages activities. And we have, if we go to the next slide, there are three questions that we invite you to reflect upon in your breakout groups. The first one is, what additional information would you need to fully understand this claim? And we can copy paste these into the chat. The second question is, what follow-up questions would you ask the company? And third, what angle would you pursue if you were to write a story about this press release? So with those three questions, I think there is a next slide just to explain a little bit the dynamic. So yeah, I think the breakout groups you can choose by language or region. We hope that everyone will self-organize, but we make sure that somebody is taking note and somebody is moderating. Feel free to take a print screen of this. We want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to contribute. We hope that this can be insightful, but also fun, number 4. And fifth, please make sure that there's somebody nominated to present back on behalf of the group in the plenary after the breakout groups. And we'll have, I think, Shehi, about 25 minutes, right?
Yes, we have 25 minutes for this. So just before I send you into the breakout rooms, if you could go 2 slides back again. This is a fictional case study, Fresh Brew. They've made 4 claims through their press release. Now, the questions are there for you. 3 questions. First, what additional information would you as a journalist need to understand these claims? What are the follow-up questions you would like to ask the company? And what angle will you pursue if you were to write a story on this? These are 3 questions. This is the case study. The questions are also in the link I provided, that Google Doc, in Spanish, in Arabic, and in English, as well as the case study. The case study is also on that Google Doc. So you have all that you need on that Google Doc. I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. There will be 2 Arabic breakout rooms, 2 Spanish breakout rooms, and about 4 English breakout rooms. Please organize yourselves. I think the first thing to do is to decide who wants to take notes. And at the end, you should decide who, or maybe at the beginning, decides who wants to present this when we come back from the breakout rooms. You have 25 minutes to do this. We will try to opt from one room to another to see how it's going. And if there are any questions, feel free to come back to the main room and or just put in the chat and we'll find it. So I'm opening up the breakout rooms now. Please choose breakout rooms based on your languages, on your respective language, and I hope you can self-organize from here. Welcome back, everyone. We have 30 more seconds and the breakout rooms will be closed. I hope you've had a very engaging discussion in the group and that you've also delegated someone to give feedback to the main room. I see many of you taking notes on the Google Doc, which is really, really good. Thank you. And that also means that calling instruction was very clear. So well done, Colin, for that. 10 more seconds and we will begin to take your reflections. So please just use the raise hand function to, if you've been delegated to give the reflections from your breakout rooms, please just use the raise hand function. Or if you moderated the breakout room and want to share with us what you've discussed, just use the raise hand function and then we can take it. We have about 7 minutes to do this, so we have to keep it really, really quick. And that way we can get some closing reflections from Colin before we close out today. Or Colin, do you want to go first? Your reflections, or we take the reflections from the breakout rooms?
Well, if we can hear from the breakout room rapporteurs, that would be great. But maybe I'll just say a few quick words that I was going back and forth between different breakout rooms and also looking in the Google Doc. And I can say that there's a lot of very good questions, very important questions that are being asked here. I think this is the right tone in terms of what is the baseline, who is defining water security, who is verifying the information. All of these are very important questions to ask. I hope that the company Fresh Brew would have good answers. But more than anything, what I wanted to leave with you all is the mindset that these claims are being made, but hopefully all of you can question them a little bit and make sure that they are accurate. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin. Let's move. Let's start with you, Lydia. What room were you, and what were the outcomes from your discussion? Lydia, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. We were English room 4, and we just made separate notes because we went on the Google Doc. But I think some of our main takeaways were just like checking the data, like the hard numbers rather than just the percentages or claims. Because some of them are quite large claims, like reducing something by 50% is quite significant. So what does that mean in practice? How did they do that? We were also discussing like the timelines that those measurements are based on. Is that over like a 10-year period, like a 5-month period? And how does that make a difference in terms of like, yeah, the numbers actually matching up to each other and over what time? And then also, yeah, we mentioned like water security. What does that mean to different people? How's that defined? Like, how did they get the stats for how many households they've impacted? Is that actual numbers? Is that based on modeling or predictions? So I think our main takeaways were just like triple checking the data and timelines, and then also acknowledging any other partners that they've achieved that work with. And if so, who are they? What did they do? Like, what were they responsible for? And I think in terms of our takeaway on the story, it would be to share the actual numbers and to probably share some like case studies or qualitative information around the impact that the work's had, for example, on a household that has improved water security, and reducing the corporate jargon, because lots of people don't know what replenished water supplies actually mean, and just backing that up with the facts and figures rather than the percentages,
Thank you.
and the ratios.
Thank you so much, Lydia. I really appreciate that. And I put in the chat the link to the doc. If you could put your notes there, would be really appreciated. Let's go to Tito. I think, let's see. Toti, yes, Toti,
Yes,
please.
Toti. Thank you so much. So we also had similar comments as to Lydia's group. But I'll just go quickly through the questions. What did they measure? The indicators that support the claim, the methods that they used, their data sources, were these claims audited? Was it just an internal audit, or were the external auditors involved? What were the gaps in data? Where are the actions taking place? They talk of agricultural activities. It would be good to know the location of the different activities which sound localized. What was the baseline of the data shared? What was happening before the reporting? Simplifying the data. What were the changes and impact of the change, social and economic changes? And we need to show, or we need to see the tangible changes as a result of these claims that they've made. Who are the local partners and actors involved in contributing to these activities? How are they making the communities more resilient? They talk of the crops that they are growing, and it would be good to understand whether these crops are not impacting now the overall ecosystem. So it'd be good to know the raw products of the beverages that they're producing. And it would also be good to understand the volumetric savings, for example, in liters, to compare their initial use with their improved use. We should know what crops are required for their ready-to-drink beverages. As I've just mentioned, the agricultural impact may be quite significant. The water savings, they may be offset by greater environmental pollution. And then the other point was in what way are they supporting the healthier ecosystems, and whose lives are they making a change? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toti. I see Sumbul, I see Jamila, but I'm wondering if anyone from the Spanish room would like to speak. Anyone from the Spanish room would love to get Jamila, Sumbul, are you from the Spanish room?
No.
Anyone from the
English.
Spanish room? It was quite an engaging one. Okay, I
There's the
want someone from the
Spanish, yeah.
Spanish room, please. Eliana, yes. Yes, Eliana, please.
Hola, buen día. ¿Puedo hablar en español y me doblan a los otros idiomas?
Yes, we hear you, but for everyone else, let's go to the interpretation and
A
then
ver.
choose English so that we can hear Eliana in English. Eliana, go on in Spanish, please.
Perfecto. Bueno, estuvo bastante activo nuestro grupo y con gente de diferentes países, así que nos divertimos con diferentes puntos de vista. Respecto a qué preguntas haríamos para ampliar
We ask in order to broaden up the information or in order to make it more specific. The first thing that was interesting for us was that they do not really mention a region or a watershed, and therefore we don't really have a reference in terms of what regulations regulate the activity. So we do not know which are the reference values and what are the indicators that they are using in order to say that they're improving. That's on the one hand. And also, when it comes to the improvements in the industrial processes, we wanted to know which were those improvements and what methods were they using in order to measure them. They are not really talking about the timelines in which they will be replenishing this 22,000 liters, cubic meters of water. Would you know the frequency in which they're measuring it, if they do it seasonally or if they do it annually, if it links to the fiscal closings of the company or the natural fiscal cycles. And they also mentioned that they make it easier to have access to water and sanitation for over 22,000 people, but they were not clear in terms of the actions that they did. Was it an improvement of the infrastructure, an update, or an update in the capacity? And when it comes to the regulations, they also talk about the fact that they were able to have savings of certain percentages in the water supply for agriculture, but they don't really mention how can they make sure that the savings were effective and if the suppliers have certifications. But I don't know.
Thank you.
What does that mean? I don't know if that's for me or...
Bueno, en
Thank you.
cuanto
We're out of
al...
time.
Ah, ok.
Yes.
Solamente em, solamente un comentario acerca del seguimiento. Decíamos
In
que
terms of
para
the
estos servicios
follow-up,
que
and we were
prestan,
saying that
no
for these
sabemos si la
services that
empresa
they're providing, we do
tiene
not
algún
know if the
plan de
company
conservación y
has any
mantenimiento de
type
esta,
of
esta infraestructura que está
maintenance
proveyendo
and
actualmente,
preservation
básicamente.
of this
Importante.
infrastructure
Thank
that
you.
they are providing
Yeah.
to the people. Thank
Gracias.
you.
Gracias. I will stop. I will jump in there. Gracias. Thank you so much. I see from the reactions from the chat that your folks were really, really following and very appreciative of your comments. Let's take Melinda Chu, who will speak for English Group 6. And let's see if we can do that in
Yeah.
1 minute
Oh yeah,
or
mine will
less.
be really brief because the other teams did a good job of yeah, they did a good job. So the only difference I would say like is that I personally, we kind of a few of us talked about would not take an antagonistic position. I know a lot of articles in this kind of field can be kind of um, or interpreted by the company as attacking them. While I think Colin mentioned, like in general, they're trying to be good stewards, whether they're actually motivated or not from same things some of us are may not be true, but I would acknowledge that they are making efforts to improve water stewardship as well as balance with also doing more investigation on the yeah like we all talked about where the data came from and how they calculated, was it modeled or was it actually raw data on like the replenishment. But yeah, it would be a kind of a balanced approach.
Thank you. Thank you, Melinda. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Sumba, for putting your comments in the chat. I'm wondering if we could take one from the Arabic room for maybe 45 seconds. Madi, I saw you were moderating the Arabic room. Do you want to share with us in few words what you discussed in the Arabic breakout room? Otherwise, let's see.
Okay, we are delegating
yes.
Yusuf to share our
Madi, go
thought.
on, please.
Yusuf.
Okay, I'm reading what's
Okay, Yusuf, keep it in 30 seconds and you can speak Arabic. The rest of us can go into the English interpretation room. 30 seconds, please.
Yes, exactly.
اوكي السؤال الأول هو حول نوع النشاط التجاري لهذه الشركة.
For the first question is the trade activity, the type of operation of these companies. Is it industrial? Is it something else?
ما هي التقنية المستخدمة؟
And what are the sources of the water? What are the techniques to retrieving the water? What is the cost also? When we also wanted to verify the timeline. How was it decided? What is the pilot period to start actually using or exploiting water? Also, we can ask other questions. What are the tools that we need to implement this project? How many parties there is to it? How many specialists or the available professional cadres to it? In the end, there, or at the end of this project, there will remain a certain amount of water that will be outside the scope of this project. How will we be dealing with that? And lastly, how does this project impact on the social life? What is the economic feasibility of this project? How can we replicate this project and disseminate it to other corporations? And this project, if we are to look into its value added benefits, how will it be cost effective?
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And then I'll give you a second or two to opt back into the original audio. Wow, really fantastic job you've all done today, and very big thank you to our facilitator, Colin. Colin, last word from you. We have your last slide on the screen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shahi, and thanks to everyone for being participants in this exercise. I hope you found it interesting. I was very glad to hear that the Latino group found this fun. That was part of the objective. But I also hope that you found it useful, and hopefully we will continue this conversation. Feel free to look for me on LinkedIn. I post a lot about this topic. And so thanks for your attention. Muchas gracias a todos. Shukran. And maybe just one final reflection is I think the translating of the corporate text into something that can be human and the human angle that was highlighted in previous sessions is so important. And that is, I think, where all of the expertise around this room will really be very useful. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll be in touch.
Great. 1,000 thanks to you, Colin, again, for a great job facilitating this workshop session. I can tell from the engagements, from the notes and the charts, from the Google Doc that we have really made the best out of this session. Thank you, thank you, thank you indeed. And a big thank you to you, over 100 and over 200 people joining today and about 150 of you staying up till this point. Thank you so much for your active engagement. Join us again on Thursday as we move from policy to people, just like Colin was saying. How do we keep that human element even in policy framework, in global negotiations? How do we see that we stay relatable to people who really need this information? We'll look into that on Thursday. Feel free to join us. When you leave the meeting, you will get survey popping up on your screen. We ask very kindly that you spend 60 extra seconds, just 60 extra seconds to tell us your impressions from today's session. We're very much looking at your responses, and based on that, we're improving and shaping the Water in Communication series. So thank you so much for doing that. This is what it looks like on the next slide. Just 5 simple questions for you to pop in your responses. And on that note, I want to say a million thanks to all of you for joining us today on today's session as we've been looking at how to go beyond the claims. How do we move from claims to investigating the claims we get every now and then. And I do hope this is useful for you in the line of your work, and that you will continue to share the outcomes of this on your social media and with other people within your network. Thank you so much. You'll get an email from me today, tomorrow, with instructions for the August session, but also with links to the recording and to the slides. And on that note, I want to say bye for now, and take care, you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.